But for businesses, these will be negotiated agreements. The lawyers will sit down and they'll hammer out what the important things are, notice and that sort of thing, just like you do for everything else. When I negotiate agreements between companies, we ask for these things, especially for kind of confidential information, right? If there's a subpoena, we want to know about it so we can contest it, and that sort of thing.
So you mentioned stuff that's being litigated at the moment. What's the best way to kind of keep up to date with changes in legal rulings and things like that from an IT security perspective?
Same place you keep up with any tech news. I mean, it's these things are on Slashdot. EFF does great updates. Follow them on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter as I retweet EFF's tweets. And a little bit of original content. Those two are pretty good. And I send out newsletters every once in a while about interesting updates. Just email me, I'll add you to my list. Yeah, that's it. Yes?
Have there been any major precedent-setting decisions that came down on the side of privacy of the data owner? Because it seems like that there are a whole bunch of requirements and agreements that limit your rights, and I don't remember seeing anything that the court decision said, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, so the question is, have there been any pro-privacy rulings? There was an interesting one, can't remember what state it was, but it was a police officer who had a text pager, so it wasn't recently. But these things take a while to litigate, and what used to happen was the police force would pay for the text pager unless it went over. And if it went over the allowed limit, then the police officer would have to pay the extra. And that was sort of the way they worked the policy. But then I think the sergeant or one of the superiors got annoyed at what this guy was constantly, one officer was constantly over. And so he went to the provider, who he paid them, and the police officer would reimburse him, and said, hey, give me all of his data of his text pages. I assume everybody in the room knows that these things get saved at the provider level. And they did, they gave it over. And there was disciplinary action against the police officer because he was doing a bunch of sex stuff with his girlfriend over his police pager. And the court ruled that it was private. He had a reasonable expectation of privacy because essentially they had a policy of not looking at these things. And they needed a warrant. But it was an early decision, and who knows what happens next. In the back?
There aren't any that spring to mind, but if there were cloud services that were more distributed, like say Tor.
Like say what?
Say like a Tor network where it's a decentralized network and the data is spread out. But you do have a contract to have your data provided on this network. Does that make this situation with law enforcement possibly shutting it down any better, or does it make it worse?
So the question is, if your data is essentially in a distributed environment where, I assume you mean where it's difficult to tell where it actually resides.
Is it desirable, or?
Well, I mean, if it's encrypted, so you don't mind that it's on some guy's LimeWire account, I guess it's okay. I don't know how you'd run a business that way. I mean, the real question you're asking is, can you hide it a bunch of different places?
If something like Tor was scaled up to a commercial cloud service,
Right.
would this solve some of the problems with these really centralized cloud services, where if you take out one thing, a bunch of businesses are affected, or if they shut down, a lot of businesses are affected?
Well, if it's a truly distributed network, then yes, that would help. If the police can figure out where they are in a seizure case, then you're still screwed. If it's, I mean, I can see where you're going, which is, it's truly distributed, and it's sort of everywhere. So how do you shut it all down? I don't know that you'll really be able to figure out a way to run a business that way, but possible. Guy in the back.
Yeah, I can answer his question succinctly, which is the magic of Tor is that there's nobody to send a subpoena to. And if you scaled it up enough to be useful for an enterprise, lost the magic.
He just said that the magic of Tor is that there's nobody to send a subpoena to. That's not really true. It's just that there are a lot of people to send subpoena. And well, maybe you can, maybe you can't, right? I mean, people are being identified by the RIAA a lot, but it's more difficult. You know, I don't know if you can really run a true business that way, but start a business. Contact me, I'll help you. Yeah.
Another note on that was that your data is held out in a different country regulations, basically jurisdiction located in the United States.
So the question was, what happens if you put your data elsewhere? I can't imagine the big companies are going to start locating these things in like tax havens and these lawless places, but they might. If your data is not within reach, then you know maybe it's protected. But there are international agreements, and you know, subject to these privacy laws, these international privacy laws. Yeah, that might help. Yes.
So a question about the, well, I can answer part of his question regarding the data being out of country. Sometimes if you're law enforcement and you ask nice enough, they'll just give you information because there's nothing governing them.
Right. He basically said that the guy in the back just said that sometimes if you're in law enforcement, you just ask nicely, they'll give it to you. And that does happen in a lot of investigations. In Foreign Corrupt Practices Act investigations, which are basically foreign bribery, there's a lot of these agencies working together. They just ask and they share. But if it's data that's protected, you know, it's a different story. They're sharing investigative data. If you want to get it from a provider, there was just a news story this morning that in the EU they're ending a system by which the U.S. was able to access data automatically in Europe because they think the U.S. doesn't have good enough privacy protections, which is basically right. Yes.
Is there any laws that recognize the difference between data at rest and data in transit?
Are there any laws that recognize the difference between data at rest and data in transit? Yes, they do, and there are different requirements for them. Yep.
Microsoft has a UL, their end user agreement that basically says that it's sold as is and with all its errors and with all its bugs.
Mm-hmm.
And the top computing provider basically say the same.
Yes, and that's what they do. The question is, can they just say it's provided as is and we have no responsibility? And the answer is yes, that's exactly what they do, and that seems like a good time to end. Thank you very much.
Stay right where you are. Tales from the Crypto are next.
All yours.